Resourceful Designer, episode 197. Presentation trumps price.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing. And now, your host. He's owned 12 different Macintosh computers since 1991. Mark Decote.
Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. In this episode, I share some insights on how, if you present something well, the price won't matter. I also share a resource to help you improve your design business in this new year. Now, what have I been up to? Well, not too much, actually. I took a lot of time off during the holidays, and I only put in, 2 days of work between December 23rd and January 2nd. And even those 2 days were really light. I didn't get a lot of stuff done. I did work on a couple of podcast artworks, and I did fix a nagging problem I was having with a client's website forum. This particular client is running their own internal mail server, and it's not playing nicely with Gravity Forms and the WP Easy SMTP plugins that I have set up on the site. But I did learn something new. I didn't know that I could set up an email through my cPanel, set up an email address for that domain, even though I'm not hosting their email, and then use localhost as the SMTP server in the plugin on the website, and that worked. So that's something I never knew before. The IT people at my hosting company shared that one with me, so I guess the old saying is wrong. You can teach an old dog new tricks. But that's about all I've done over the last few weeks, or last couple of weeks, I should say. Spent some time with family and just relaxed. I did spend a lot of time on my new PlayStation 4 that I got on Black Friday. My kids got me a few games, so yeah, I guess a lot of time spent gaming as well. That's what I've been up to. Now it's time for the resource of the week. And I'm starting off this year talking about the resourceful designer community. January is the perfect time of year to take charge of your design business's future, setting goals for yourself, creating a vision path to follow, acknowledging your career ambitions, and knowing what you have to do to reach them. The start of a new year, heck, the start of a new decade, is the perfect time to get that ball rolling. And the Resourceful Designer community is the perfect group to help you achieve those dreams. The community is a small, intimate group of designers who are dedicated to growing their respective design businesses and dedicated to helping fellow community members with theirs. Not a day goes by that the community members are not sharing ideas, asking for advice, or offering help. And we love sharing in the achievements of others, whether it be simple things like the approval of a small job from a difficult client, or the success of a design presentation that ended with the signing of a huge contract. Big or small, we love sharing with each other the things that are happening that we're proud of in our business, as well as the struggles. We're there for each other, and we can be there for you as well. If 2020 is going to be your year of growth for your business, then why not join a community of people willing to help you grow? Visit resourcefuldesigner.com/community and become a member today. And now, presentation trumps price. I want to share a bit of an informal case study with you. As you may or may not know, in February of 2019, I launched a new side branch to my design business called Podcast Branding. I started this side project because I wanted to take the advice that I had shared back in episodes 54 and episodes 93 of the podcast, as well as the interview I did with Craig Burton in episode 174. And they were all about niching down your design services. And I wanted to put that into practice for myself. You see, I'd been designing artwork and websites for podcasters for several years, but I was just known as Mark. He's a designer who could help if you needed artwork or websites, and that was it. I was one of, hundreds of designers who had dabbled in the podcast space. But at the beginning of 2019, I decided to take that dabbling more seriously and focused my efforts on becoming known as a designer specializing in the podcast space. So how did I do it? Did I take special courses to become a podcast design specialist? No. Did I undergo podcast design certification? No. Did I hire a podcast branding coach to show me the way? No. All I did was launch a new website and start telling people in the podcast space that I specialize in podcast branding. Now, if you're interested, you can actually check out my website at podcastbranding.co. So after launching podcast branding, all of a sudden, my name was being passed around more and more by people I knew, and shortly after that, by people I didn't know. Before long, I started seeing podcast branding being mentioned in Facebook groups whenever somebody would ask about podcast artwork or websites. Now, I wanted to share that little bit with you just to show you how valuable niching can be. People who never shared my name before were all of a sudden doing so, not because I was a designer, but because I was a designer who specializes in podcasting. But of course, I titled this episode Presentation Trumps Price, so let me get to that part. In October of 2019, a very respectable podcast hosting company put out a great blog article about the importance of having good podcast cover art. The article detailed what to do and what not to do when creating your own cover art. Now, the author knew that not everyone would be comfortable designing their own cover art for their podcast, so he listed 5 sources that you can use to have podcast artwork designed. And I was lucky enough to have podcast branding as one of them. Now, I'm just going to go on a small side note here. That's another benefit of niching. The author included podcast branding in his article because I focus on the podcast space. If I had had just a generic graphic design website that covered everything, it probably wouldn't have made it onto his list. But the fact that the website is dedicated to the podcast space, that's why it was included. Okay, now back to my story. The sources listed in the article were Fiverr, 99 Designs, and 3 quote-unquote independent designers, including podcast branding. Now, since that article came out, I've seen a spike in cover art orders. Now, on the order form on the website, I asked the question, how did you hear about podcast branding? And in the past 2 months, I've had over a dozen people tell me that it was through that blog article. Thinking back to the article itself, when the author listed the 5 sources where you can get podcast artwork done, he also listed the prices that each place charges for podcast cover art. And of the 5 sources, I'm the most expensive one listed. Although 99 Designs was listed there, and it did say that you could spend as much as you want if you wanted more and more and more designers. You could spend a couple of $1,000s on 99 Designs if you're willing to hire more and more designers to enter the contest. But as for just base prices, podcast branding was the most expensive of the 5 listed there. So if I was the most expensive, why did over a dozen people place orders with me in the past 2 months? Now, I ask each one of them. I always get on a video chat with everybody who places an order, and I ask them that question. I says, of the 5 services listed, why did you choose mine? And you know what they said? It was my presentation. Of the 5 services, my website looked the most professional and gave them the most confidence moving forward. It was the perceived value that they saw. Now, my website is set up so that people have to place and pay for their order before they even talk to me. And over a dozen people were willing to do that, knowing that I was more expensive than the other 4 services listed in that article. And they did it solely based on how my website looks. It's the perceived value. Some of the comments I received were, I wanted to deal with a professional, and I got that from your website. I wanted to work with someone who understands the podcast space, and your site clearly indicates that you do. Your website looks more professional than the others. And I love this one. I wanted to deal with a real designer, not someone on Fiverr or 99 Designs, and you impressed me more than the other 2 designers listed in the article. You get what I'm saying? Even though I'm the most expensive of all the services listed there, and the prices were right there for everybody to see, the perceived value of what I was offering was enough for over a dozen people to spend extra money to get the artwork designed right. Now, I have no way of knowing how much business the other 4 sources received from the article. Maybe they each got more than a dozen. Maybe they got 2 dozen or 3 dozen. But I don't care about them. I just care about me. And I've proven to myself that what I'm doing is working. And the point I'm trying to get across here to you is that even if your prices are higher than others, there will be people willing to invest in you for that perceived value of what they will get in return. So think about how you're presenting yourself. And it doesn't matter if you're targeting a niche or if you don't, if you're a generalist. Are you making sure that what you're portraying shows your professionalism? Does it instill confidence in your abilities for anybody who wants to hire you? Because that presentation will trump price. So maybe take a little bit of time, look over your website, look over your marketing material, and see if there's anything that you can improve on right now. And while you're at it, why not raise your prices? If you present yourself as worth the value, people will be willing to pay your higher prices no matter what they are. So I wanted to share that little bit with you and let you know what I'm experiencing now because of a simple blog article that listed 5 places. And even though I am the most expensive, I'm still getting orders coming in. So take a moment and think, what is your perceived value? Does your presentation trump the price that you're charging? Let me know what you thought of this episode by leaving a comment for it at resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 197. So that's it for this episode. Short and sweet. I'm recording it on Friday the 3rd, so I didn't have a lot of time. I want to get this ready to go on Monday. I don't want to have to work on it on the weekend. And I'm hoping to get back on schedule next week and for the rest of the year. So let me take this opportunity to wish you a happy new year. And I hope that it's a prosperous year for you and your design business. And to help you along with that, why don't you check out resourcefuldesigner.com/community and join a group of great designers who are willing and eager to help you out and encourage you along that path. So once again, that's resourcefuldesigner.com/community. Until next time, I am Mark Decote, wishing you all the best with your graphic design business and reminding you to stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer Podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.